as the border's been in the news a lot and the policies that Biden has enacted, have you seen changes from that have affected San Antonio?
I know people that come across legally, and they sometimes have to wait all day long to get across that bridge where they're looking down there and they're watching people swim across.
Keeping our republic is on the line, and it requires patriots with great passion, dedication, and eternal vigilance to preserve our freedoms. Jenny Beth Martin is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She is an author, a filmmaker, and one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. But the title she is most proud of is mom to her boy-girl twins. She has been at the forefront, fighting to protect America's core principles for more than a decade. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Today, I'm joined by a truly inspiring guest. Kit Goldsbury is a remarkable entrepreneur who has built some incredible businesses, from transforming San Antonio's historic Pearl Brewery into the stunning Hotel Emma. Kit's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. In this episode, Kit shares his passion for revitalizing historic properties, his experiences in building successful brands like Pace Picante Sauce and NatureSweet tomatoes, and his commitment for taking care of his employees. Join us as we dive into Kit's fascinating stories and learn valuable lessons on entrepreneurship, perseverance, and the power of giving back. Kit, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We're in your hotel, the Hotel Emma, right now, recording this. How did you wind up building this hotel?
Well, I used to come here and drink free beer.
Really?
That's really how it all started. Yeah, right. When it was an operating brewery, because I went to school not far from here. And but I love the old buildings. That's really the truth. And when it came up for sale in 2002, I think it was a pretty worn out piece of property over here. So we got it at a pretty decent price, and we waited a long time before we had research. We got people to come in, like, research the hotel, and they said, don't put a hotel there until everything else is built around it. So we started with a couple of restaurants, and we had some really good advisors who had retired from their businesses, and very, very good at what they did. So one of them was real estate, and so let's test if anybody wants to live here. We had some of these little apartments that you see around, and so we opened those up for tests, and young people went crazy, and they all moved in. A lot of them haven't left, and so that proved that people wanted to live here. Now, there was a young age that people wanted to live here. Then and that led to the apartments you see around here. So, and then we had a couple of restaurants in here by a really well-known chef in San Antonio, and he was a pioneer. He put 2 restaurants here that gave us credibility. And then after that, I had gone to the CIA, which is the Culinary Institute of America. The first thing they said, and we were standing in front of the president's desk, and he's become a friend now. But at that point, they said, no, we just had our plan for the next 5 or 6 years, and we're not going to have any more campuses. So one of us was a smart lawyer, and he sits down, and he said, why don't we just dream a little bit?
Smart.
True. And so we said, let's do a test. You guys come down, we'll pay you. They like to hear that, nonprofits. And so we came down and did a test in one of the little buildings on the grounds, and they did really well. One of the things when we were standing there, they said, we want to test who's in your kitchens. Do you know? And they said, what do you mean, do you know? We teach them. We certainly know who's in our kitchens. So let us test it, and we'll pay for it. So we test it and find out that 30% of the students in kitchens are Hispanic, which is the target we were looking for. And so, probably 150% down here. But anyway,
right,
we put the school up.
In San Antonio.
Near the closer you get to Mexico.
Right.
Yeah. And so we we had the school for 2 years, and it showed up that 40 to 50% of the students, and that's still the number years later, 10, 12 years later, are Hispanic kids who didn't have a chance to break through that glass ceiling, as they call it. And they're always in the kitchen, but not necessarily the chef. And so that was kind of the beginning of the whole thing.
Wow. And this area that we're in San Antonio, it's called Pearl. Mm-hmm. How did it get its name?
From the Pearl Brewery.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was at one time, I believe, employed like 20% of the city.
Wow.
So lots of people.
And then the hotel is the whole area on the Pearl property, or is it mostly the hotel that was?
No, it was the whole area because they had warehouses and so forth. And then the hotel's only 8 years old now, and we've been here almost 20 years. And so the guy there was another person we got, and that was a company that studied public places. And they looked around and decided where we should put where on the property. And one was a plaza, which is the one where we have the market, and we'll get 3,000 or 4,000 people to it on a Saturday. But they said the secret to that is you have to have 10 things around it. You got to have a church, you got to have maybe a public building, and you got to have bars, retail, and things that bring people to that grassy space that you have. And that worked, and it worked really well. So then we decided to open the hotel, and it's done very well. We just got awarded the #1 in Texas.
Well, I think you should be #1 in the whole country. I travel so much, and I'm usually at chain hotels, and I have a good experience, and I just need a place to stay. I need to know it's clean and safe, and so that works.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in this hotel, and it is everything about the hotel. Every detail is it's thoughtful. The staff are amazing. They love their job. They love being here, and it's my favorite hotel in the whole world.
It's always the people. You tell me if you check this out, see if it works. But they were told if you're 10 feet from a guest, you say hello. And so I hope that's working.
Yes, it is. They say hello. One time during COVID, or after, I think it was in 2021. So after Biden was in office, I was in the area, and I checked in, and I stayed here, and I was so tired and so hungry. It was like 11:30 Eastern time or something. And most hotels quit serving food. So you couldn't get food. You couldn't get bottles of water. I mean, everything was broken in hotels. That's the only way I know to describe it. And I said, is there any food I can get? And they said, oh yes, we have room service. And I said, well, it's 10:30, because it was 11. It was like Eastern time. So it was a 10:30 here. I said, it's awfully late. They said, oh no, we have a full service menu. And I'm checking in at the front desk, and the lady said, what would you like to eat? And I said, I just want some grilled chicken and a salad. And she said, I'll take care of that for you. You go ahead and get in your room, and it'll be up in 20 minutes. And sure enough, it was. And it was such a breath of fresh air, considering how many broken hotels there were after COVID.
Was that was after COVID?
Yeah.
Because sometimes during COVID, we'd have one guest.
That's what the lady said. She said, we stayed employed the entire time. We didn't shut down, and sometimes there'd be one guest, but we all still had our jobs, and they appreciated that so much. There's dignity in working.
Yeah. Well, it paid off, because when we opened, after all that COVID stuff, we opened up and we had a full staff, where other hotels had to go and hire more people and find people and stuff.
The staff knew what to do. A lot of the hotels that I've been in, they had to go back and rehire people or hire new people, and sometimes I've checked into some hotels, and I'm telling the person at the front desk that what I'm asking for is possible. I'm like, I know it is. I just did it last night in another city. It works. You just need to find,
Yeah.
And I don't get upset with them. I try to be very patient.
Well, I think in some of those hotels that let them all go or fired them or whatever you want to call it, maybe they didn't get the best back.
No. Well, and why would they? Because the employees are always going to wonder if something happens, they're going to let us go on a dime, you know, so we can come and work, but there's no sense of loyalty.
You lose the trust. Yeah.
Right.
Yep, that's right.
Now, this is not your first business venture. You also started, or not started, but built a family business. And it's really a household name, at least for people who grew up in the South, Pace Picante Sauce.
Yeah, New York City. We were talking about it just a little while ago.
Yes, this stuff's made in New York City. My family, when I was a kid, we would laugh at that advertisement. My dad thought it was the funniest thing. But you took just this condiment and turned it into something that houses across the entire country know about, and it's sold everywhere.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, I'll tell you. But there again, it started from almost nothing. And my background, though, it was in Mexico, so I was brought up on hot sauce and all kinds of chilies and whatever. And so I had a real taste for it. And so I love my product. So, you know, when you love your product, you sell it better.
That's true. And what are the lessons that you learned as you built that company?
I think it's still about how you take care of people. That's the number one thing. And we tried to do as much as we could for everybody. Yeah.
And then you sold the company, and you sold it for you got a very generous amount when you sold the company, but you didn't stop. You just kept building companies, and you didn't go off into the sunset. You remain active. No,
we found a little tomato company, which we turned into a pretty big tomato company, which we have just sold as well. But we did the same thing with them as the people, and they were all in Mexico for the most part. And we did a lot of things that weren't being done by the produce business in Mexico. We had a lot of loyalty there for that reason.
And what kind of things were you doing?
Well, like I remember in one case there was a storm that tore a lot of their houses up, and we went and replaced them or put roofs on them or whatever had to be done. There was another town that didn't have water wells, and so we went and drilled a bunch of water wells for this town so they'd have water. Things like that.
Pretty basic but compassionate things.
Roof over your head and water.
Right.
My God, yeah.
Right. Shelter and water.
Yeah.
Wow. And that tomato company took something that really is just rather a generic item and turned it into a name brand, didn't you?
Right.
Talk about that a little bit.
NatureSweet. It started out as a tiny company again, and we kept working on the quality of it. It was a pretty good quality to start, but we kept working on that until we got a product that's about 2 to 3 times sweeter than any tomato you get in a grocery store of the larger variety. And so we kept working on that, and it paid off. I mean, the kids were eating them like candy, and we were promoting them as a snack.
Right.
Yeah. And so it was a lot more than just putting them on a sandwich and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and it's true. It's better than candy. It's really a lot better than
for
candy.
You, for sure.
Much better for you.
Yeah.
And then you have a son who is in college, and you've been a parent. What kind of advice would you give to parents?
I think that you really have to watch when they're in their growing stages, and to watch who their friends are, because I had some problems in my past where we didn't do a good job of that. I think the child really turns out the best when 2 people are managing him or her, and it really takes work on both sides of the parents to bring them along. But watching their friends, because that can be something that can be drawn to one side or the other by bad friends. So
I think that's really important today when so many kids are going online, and I always tell parents, make sure that if your kids are on social media, that you have the login to their social media. And it isn't that I I'm not in any way suggesting you don't trust your kids. What I'm suggesting, though, is that the algorithm from the social media shows them things, and you won't see the same thing if you're following them. So you can see everything they post just by watching them from your account, but what you don't see is all the stuff they're seeing.
Right.
And sometimes that can influence in the same way that friends can. And you have to be very cognizant and careful about
well,
that.
you have to, and there's a lot of things that they won't even know. They'll take a lot of these drugs that are coming across the border now are getting into things that they wouldn't suspect that would hurt them. And so there's a lot of that. So a lot of that stuff, you touch it and it'll kill you.
Yeah. It's really
the fentanyl.
Right. The fentanyl is just, it is
terrible.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Now, you said that did you grow up in Mexico?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. I'm from San Antonio, but we've been ranching in Mexico for about 100 years. And so we still have it. And of course, you tend to grow up in the saddle when you're on a ranch. So I did.
And the people in this part of the border's in the news a lot right now because so many awful things are happening with the way that the border is being handled right now. I bet that you could talk a lot about the changes that you've seen over the years and what's happening on the border. But also, the people who live in this part of Texas and in New Mexico and in Arizona, they have such an interesting relationship with the border. The people who've lived here, and this is their home, because they have friends. Sometimes the friends live on the other side of the border and they come to America, or you were ranching on the other side of the border. And it traditionally in our country's history, that's been a good relationship.
It has, and there's a book written called "The River Never Divided Us," and that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, they still go back and forth. It's not as hard now, apparently, to go back and forth, but that's the way it was. The families divided, but not really. It did physically, but not really keeping the families apart. So,
have you seen any changes as the border's been in the news a lot and the policies that Biden has enacted? Have you seen changes from that have affected San Antonio?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot more homeless here. There's a lot more crime. Car thefts are up like 30 or 40%, something like that. And but you see a lot of people on the street now that you never saw before. And it's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And people have trouble. I know people that come across legally, and they sometimes have to wait all day long to get across that bridge where they're looking down there and they're watching people swim across.
Yeah. That's just, they're breaking in line. And we're, like if I'm standing in line at Six Flags or something, I'm not okay if somebody breaks in line. It's not, It's not right for that to be happening for the people coming into the country.
Not to mention thousands.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I would be really upset if I were in line and thousands came in front of me. And that is unfortunately happening right now.
That's too bad.
You have been a supporter of Tea Party Patriots action, and you care about this country. What motivates you to care so much about the country? You're a businessman. You could just go on and focus on your business and ignore politics.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about what these young kids are growing up in and what they're getting indoctrinated in the schools, and it's wrong. Yeah, we were talking earlier about what's happening to some of them, and a lot of times the belief in some of these other things, socialism, communism, it doesn't matter if it's the truth or not, as long as you make them believe it. And these big crowds that are rioting and so forth like that, I bet you half the people in them that young don't know the real reason that what happened. I'm thinking the Israel-Palestine kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that is correct. They kind of get swept up in it, or I thought this as the Black Lives Matter movement became such a big deal in June and July of 2020. I know that there were people who were going to those events in the daytime, and they were doing so for very good reasons. They don't want to see discrimination. They don't want to see racism, and their motives were very pure. And then as it would get darker, as the sunlight went down, there was this other element that was coming out and became very, very destructive. And it wound up being tied with that movement. And I'm sure a lot of it was with that movement. But I don't think that that's why most of the people, when they first came out, were there. And I think some of the same thing when you're talking about Israel and what's happening in Gaza right now, there are people who think that they're standing up for something that is right, and then they're chanting things that essentially are calling for the destruction of Israel. And I don't.
Yeah, somebody's got to be planning all that amongst the groups that we're talking about. Who it is, I don't know, but yeah, I think there's a lot of, we're all belongers, and when you belong into a big movement, maybe that's what they think. This is cool, but the history behind it is not getting out. And and the Black Lives Matter, that's a great thing, but it's dividing us all up into colors, and all that stuff is not good.
No.
I watch out here. San Antonio's pretty different, but because I watch out here last Saturday, and I bet we had 3,000 people up there, and it looked like a cross section of the world. Everybody getting along, everybody standing in line, everybody eating, everybody just having a good time. And I just thought, wow, this is really cool. But when we start pitting one against the other,
it's harmful to the communities where that happens, and it's harmful to the whole country.
Yeah.
If somebody were starting a business today, what kind of advice would you give them if they're an entrepreneur starting a business?
Well, if you have something you really like or can do well, keep at it, and surround yourself with smart people. That'd be my biggest advice.
And that's what you've done?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And when you are looking at hiring people who are smart people, what are how can you tell that you're hiring the right people?
It's hard sometimes.
It is. Sometimes.
We watch people run parts of companies for 10 to 12 years before we decided to make them the head of something. And it worked out, but we were able to watch them for a long time, which was great. Otherwise, you're taking a little bit of a gamble. You need to gather all the information you can on somebody if you're going to hire them. And I remember a friend of mine passed away recently he and I were together for 25 years at Pace. And a headhunter found him, hired him. He's a marketing guy. And marketing guys were given about 3 years before they move on to some other job. Anyway, we were together for 25 years.
Wow.
So it's luck. It's lucky. A lot of luck plays in it. So you have a gut feel, but still a lot of luck.
And then treating them the right way makes them want to stay, right? I mean, they normally leave in marketing after 3 years, staying for
bounce on to something else, but they like the product too.
Right.
I think so. Yeah.
In staying at something for 25 years, it's a testament to what the whole entire business was.
Yeah. And it's not just when we have a friend who's now runs a business, but when he came from a cereal company, and then we sold Pace, and he was kind of without a job, so he floated around for a while, and then we went and talked to him. He said, how would you like to be in the produce business? And oh, by the way, it's in Mexico. So you need to learn the produce business. You need to learn Spanish. He did it. And for 10 or 15 years, he did it and built it into a great company.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
so
amazing.
So it doesn't not necessarily the product. He liked the people.
Right.
Yeah.
And working for you, the kind of company it was going to be.
I guess so.
Well, and I would imagine he knew what it was going to be like, and he helped make it into that kind of company as well.
Well, and he had, we had 15 years before we moved him even further up. So
That's good.
to watch him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very good. And then loving the product. It is interesting. It's Pace Picante Sauce. It's tomatoes. It's hotels and real estate. It's sometimes not the flashy things. It's just the things that you have a passion for.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be people. And I went to a company yesterday. This man is from South Africa, and young guy, and he started a lumber yard here. And so I went out to his company, and he's unbelievable stuff. He takes giant trees and saws them into things, makes tables and all kinds of different stuff out of it. But South Africa to Texas, that was pretty amazing.
Right.
But he does beautiful things. But he's a young guy, and to watch him build a business like that is, it's exciting to me.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
And it's great that our country provides that kind of opportunity for people.
Yeah. Yep.
That's amazing. What are some of the struggles that you've had as you've grown businesses? What are challenges and hurdles you've had to overcome?
Sometimes in the early years, we ran into some people that took our formula and tried to start another business. This was in the salsa business. And we had to go to court. And that was a long, horrible experience. But we prevailed eventually. We didn't win the case, which was strange. But anyway.
The court system is often strange.
Yeah. We had to appeal it and get out of town, basically, because anyway, sometimes we can't trust people. So
you end up prevailing with
marketing. The matter of fact, attorneys that were on the losing side, which was us, said, "Go out, market them. That's how you're going to beat them," and that's how we did it.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
Suppose it takes perseverance. And even when you look at something and it seems like you've got a loss and a defeat, finding a way to work around that and just keep
sometimes
going.
It drives you more, makes you want to win.
Yeah. And then here in this area, you built this up, and the river is right by here. I just think this area is a beautiful area. It's taken an old part of San Antonio and honored the history and built this amazing community. Yeah,
it's been fun to watch. It's been amazing. It took a few years for it to catch on, but now it's really popular, and people have caught on too. It makes you wonder, wish you'd bought 100 more acres, but it was pretty risky at the time. And so there's been a lot of things built around here. So we welcome them because we got 25 restaurants, and we'll feed them all.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
And it allowed other people to be entrepreneurs as well.
Right. Well, we had to pull that river up here.
How'd you do that?
It was here, but it was a creek, and it was there were people living down, camped out all along it, and all. It was a mess. And there was a great mayor that helped us, and we pulled it all the way up to this property and cleaned it all up, and that's what you see now.
How do you pull a river up?
Well, number one, you clean it out because it was full of weeds, and it had water, but the headwaters of the springs are very close to here, and so we knew it had a good flow all the time, and we dammed up parts of it and stuff like that. And so the river is, it looks what it looks like today now. But, and that helped people make up their minds to come and build all up and down the river too. So there's a lot of, if you drive around the area, there's a lot of new buildings that have been built probably because of that river being pulled up.
That's pretty amazing.
So, yeah, it's cool.
That really is cool.
Yeah.
And then when you pulled the river up, did you envision when you and your attorney were talking to the Culinary Institute of America, and you were saying, let's dream for a little bit. Did you dream it was going to be like it is today?
Didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
Didn't have a clue, especially across the river, because it was pretty rough over there too. And we finally ended up adding parts of the other side of the river because we wanted to kind of control our piece of the river, which we do pretty much control now as far as what gets built back and forth. Yeah.
And recently you were named to the Texas Business Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I had to get up and make a speech, which I hate doing, but anyway, somehow I passed. But it's a vote of a lot of people, and they have one a year, and put up of several people. And I was lucky enough to get voted on, and that's how it happened.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all. You're
well, thanks.
A good businessman, and people they love working for you.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks.
And you're just, I think that it's just amazing to see what you've built here, the community, and the fact that you're creating, because you invested and took the risk and created opportunities for yourself. It also created opportunities for so many other people.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And that's what capitalism does.
Yeah.
And
somebody's got to light the wick, and that's what happened. I mean, people started seeing what was happening here, and invested all along the river, all the way to downtown. So, in which it wasn't much before that. So.
And no matter how good a government is and how much a government exists in an area, a government can't do the same kind of thing that businesses are able to do. No,
not at all. Or they would have done it.
Right.
I mean, when this place closed, you would think, but the government benefits. They were getting a lot of revenue from the taxes coming out of here. So that's a real plus for government.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that can go to schools and public works and other things that the government does and traditionally has done well, maybe not so great with schools at the moment around the entire country. I'm not picking on San Antonio specifically, but those are the kind of things that the government traditionally has done well with.
Yeah.
So. Well, I appreciate you being here and just talking a little bit and sharing some of your story and your experiences and the lessons that you've learned in your life.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here and good to see you.
It's so good to be with you. Thank you, Kit.
Thanks.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin, produced by Kevin Mooneyhan, and directed by Luke Livingston. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
If you like this episode, let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment or a 5-star review. And if you want to be the first to know every time we drop a new episode, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for whichever platform you're listening on. If you do these simple things, it will help the podcast grow, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much.